is just one long, dark tunnel.
88.1 FM, WCRX.
Welcome back to Deep Dark Tunnel. This is episode 28. We're here with Michigan DJ and producer Gettoblaster. How you doing this morning?
Fantastic. How are you?
Doing all right.
Thank you so much, Paul, for being on the show with us today. You were originally from Chicago, which is the town of like house, which is what you're in a duo with Zach, who is from Detroit, which is mainly techno.
Yeah, it's the home of techno for sure.
So
which is funny because the Detroit techno, the early techno, in my opinion, sounds like house music, just a little trackier, but it's they're both very similar.
So when we talk about Gettoblaster, that would be like sort of a combination of both house and techno. And then a little bit of what I've read on a previous interview is you guys made your own genre where it's like sort of like, I forgot what it was called, like ghetto house, I believe.
Yeah, we didn't create that, but we are definitely a hybrid of that. Like it's very influenced by the Chicago ghetto house or earlier days they called it jack tracks. Like the original tracks that first came out for house music were very like drum beat orientated with like words that were stuttered over and over. Basically, our stuff is a resemblance of that. So like one of my biggest inspirations growing up was my next door neighbor, Mickey Mixon Oliver, who was part of the original Hot Mix 5, which was the first 5 guys that were on the radio doing house music. So it's kind of where I got my idea of doing house music.
That's awesome. And we were talking about in the pre-interview a little bit about your upcoming as an artist being in the Chicago warehouse underground scene. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I started DJing in high school, and it was actually maybe even before that, it might have been junior. I was 12 years old when I started DJing. So
wow.
Like basically I sold my go-kart that my parents gave me, and I used all the cash to buy turntables because growing up in Chicago, especially then, kids wanted to be basketball players, doctors, and DJs, which is cool because like when I tell this to my friends from LA or New York is probably the only place that's similar to Chicago where you grew up wanting to be a DJ. Like, and that was it. So like I started in Chicago, I DJing high school dances, proms, all that bullshit. And then I went into like wanting to go to teen clubs. And then that turned into, I got a job at the record store and then did guest spots on the radio and did all this stuff with house music. And then I went to a rave. I fell in love with the underground scene. I was like, oh my God, there is 5,000 people in this warehouse. It's 8:00 in the morning. It didn't matter. The dude that was on stage or the girl that was performing on stage was the most important aspect of the whole thing. And we were all part of it. It was cool. So I just kind of kept going with it. And I kept setting my goals higher and higher, making music, trying to play different cities, selling mixtapes, did the whole 9. And before I knew it, I was 110 countries and every city in America I've played across the globe. It was crazy. I try not to ever look back. That was a crazy ride. I'm still going on this ride. So.
In your come up, you're saying you would do everything yourself, sort of like DIY?
Yeah.
And that's
I would throw parties. I would make mixtapes. Like I actually have a tattoo right here. I don't know if you guys could see it, but it's called Chicago Life. It was my first mixtape that I ever made. I actually sold 25,000 copies of this out of my trunk.
What?
Like throughout all the record stores and flea markets and stuff in Chicago. Like they used to have kiosks in the middle of the mall that sold mixtapes. And I would actually mass produce my tapes, and I would actually sell them out of my trunk. And it was kind of crazy. I'd sell them to the stores for $10. They would sell them for 20, and I was killing it as a teenager.
How did you do that? Did you like do wholesale, or was that more of just like going to?
Yeah, it was wholesaling it to the stores. Like all these record shops, independent, they would call them mix shops, is what mixtape shops.
Right.
And they would just have, and you would go to the shop in the middle of the mall, and they would have like every genre of music, and the DJ would put together an hour mix, and it was crazy. It was a crazy story. I sold 120,000 tapes in like 4 years. That's kind of crazy.
That is really crazy. And that's
it's a whole different world. It's like the old school SoundCloud. like SoundCloud is how people click to listen to mixes now. That's how we did it back then. It's crazy.
And you guys are still sort of like making your own brand by having Aliens on Mushrooms, which is your new label. So would you care to tell us a little bit more about that?
So Aliens on Mushrooms, like I was telling you before, we had a different label before, but this one, like what we're gearing this towards, so the name, let's talk about the name first. I'll try to make it super quick because I talk forever. But Aliens on Mushrooms. So like aliens heads have always been like the logo, or not necessarily the logo, but like a mascot for rave parties, underground rave parties. Like when I was a kid, everyone would dress up like an alien or have an alien sticker, and you just knew that was rave. And mushrooms, there's like this whole like hippie version of it, like going to electric forest and camping. And I was like, how do I put these two worlds together so they get it? And I was like, okay, techno hippies, let's figure this out. Like, and that's kind of like the inspiration behind it. Make it marketable to everybody, but put both worlds into the logo. That's how we came up with the name. And the music will always have some sort of inspiration from techno legends or house legends, which come from New York, Chicago, LA, stuff, London. And like the first release was us and Roland Clark, who's an East Coast legend vocalist. He's the guy who did I Don't Know What Is What, They Just Strut, what the, he did that huge vocal. So I was like, I need to get this guy on this vocal. So I got him on the vocal, and I was like, I need two worlds. I need a really trendy friend of mine that does house music that's from Europe, and that was Amin Edge and Dance from France. And they were like the creators of G House, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term, but it's like gangster hip hop and deep house put together. Ooh, they created this genre. And they were on the cover of Mixed Mag. They did some really cool stuff with that whole launch of that in the early 2013, 14-ish era. And then we were like, I'm friends with the guy one of the guys who created techno, which is Kevin Saunderson. And he's in a group called Inner City, and he has inducted his son Dantes into the group. So I'm friends with him also. I'm like, would you guys do a remix of this track for us? So we launched the label with, our friends from France and our homies from Detroit that created techno. And I was like, this is like exactly what I want to do with the label. So I'm super stoked about that. Like, so that was kind of like, old school, new school, kind of putting those two worlds together, house and techno both. So, and that was the first release, and we want to continue this. That's what second release was us and our friends from the East Coast, a rapper Born Eye, and my friends Love and Logic were big promoters in New York as well. And we got a remix from Harry Romero, who is one of the most prolific tech house guys in the business. He did a lot of early work on Subliminal Records with Eric Barillo and a bunch of stuff like that. He's been playing Ibiza for, 20 years at this point, probably, I'm sure. So we had him part of it. And our third one was the release you had mentioned earlier with us and DJ Dion, the ghetto house legend from Chicago himself. So we had him on board with a bunch of remixes. So we're just going to keep this formula of like old school, new school, techno, house, both worlds, Detroit, Chicago, just keep it going. That's the idea.
I love that.
With a cool brand.
And if I'm correct, you had your label release party at TV Lounge in Detroit?
Yes, we had our first party at TV Lounge, and then we did a warehouse party in San Diego. And It's cool because like I never intended it on being like the weird like Elro of underground, because like there's Elro's kind of big, is considered underground, but it's a little more on the commercial side. But I was joking around with my girlfriend at the time, and I said to her, well, she's still my girlfriend, but I told her, I was like, hey, why don't we buy a bunch of props? And she's like, what do you mean? I don't know, like. I have $1,000 to throw in the garbage, so let's buy a bunch of props to see what happens. So we bought like all these like life-size aliens, and we inflated them and we hid them all over the venue. And then we got these half human-sized mushrooms, and we put them all throughout the venue. And we bought sunglasses that were little bug eyes, and we gave them to everybody. And I stepped back halfway through the party. I looked up and I saw an alien crowd surfing, and I saw a party train with all the mushrooms going past. I go, I couldn't have planned this better. It was incredible. So
sounds like it was really fun.
Yeah, it's becoming a theme party now, and we're getting ready to do another one in Detroit at Marble Bar on September 24th. Actually, so
just curious. I'm from Detroit as well. I've sort of been around the scene a little bit. Have you ever been to Trumbleplex or Russell, the Russell Industrial?
Yeah.
Do you guys play shows there?
I'm sorry?
Do you guys ever play shows there?
Yeah, we've played at the Russell before.
That is so cool. I love the whole like layout for those listening who don't know what the Russell is, it's a industrial sort of like warehouse where it's like artist rental spaces, and a lot of really cool things happen in Detroit at the Russell.
Oh, yeah.
So it's mostly just
I've done everything from like played rave parties there to I did the first High Times Cannabis Cup there. I was a judge and a DJ.
Oh, how cool!
And we just did our photo shoot there recently. It was kind of cool.
Really?
Yeah, there's like my friend Max Dashevsky. I don't know if you know him, but he's a real popular photographer. He does Grizz's photography and a bunch of other artists. But yeah, he offered to do a photo shoot for us, and his studio's in there. Like, there's so many different studios in that building. There's so much history to that building. It's crazy.
Right. And you guys just filmed something with Missy in Detroit too.
Yeah, on video for HOUSE. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really beautiful. I thought it like really like encompassed like the graffiti of Detroit and sort of like the urban landscape really well. What
Thanks.
Sort of was the inspiration for that video?
So initially we were like, where do we shoot this video? Chicago or Detroit? That was the toughest part. We were so on the fence, but everyone who was involved in the filming of that was from Detroit. So we were like, let's just do it in Detroit. And we're gonna do a video in Chicago too. We had to do both, but we started with that one. That was our first time we've actually shot a video ever. As long as I've put out records, I've never shot a video. This was the first time I actually wanted to shoot a music video and got a whole camera crew together and wardrobe change, the whole nine. Like we wanted to hit all the spots that like you either heard about in Detroit or like, because you've been there a million times, like where Movement Festival happens. We had to be like on the grounds for a second. We needed to be like in the market where, Detroit Hustle's Harder is, and all these cool things that, we had to like include all this stuff. And it was so cold. It was literally like 15 degrees, but we didn't act like it in the video, but we were freezing.
Yeah. It did not look like that.
It was mid-January when we shot that video, so it was so cold. If you know Detroit in January, it's freezing.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, but at least it was like empty, so you have a nice clean canvas to film.
Oh yeah, and the record, we did it on like a Monday afternoon too, where that whole area is just not too busy, and that record ended up becoming a hit record for us. It went number one on Beatport for like 6 weeks overall, and it just hit what Spotify would consider Spotify Platinum. It just hit 1 million plays the other day. So we're super excited about that.
Well, congratulations.
So, thanks. Super cool. And the people who played this, we didn't even know it was a hit record. We knew it was number one on Beatport, but that's whatever. It's like, that's the sales site for DJs. And I say whatever, but it's a big accomplishment. Like, there's 5,200 releases a week. So to like hit number one globally on that is crazy. But I started realizing it was big when other people were coming up to me and, hey, did you play this record? Because we play after you. We want to play this. We want to play your record. And I was like, I think this record's big. Like huge DJ, like huge, way bigger than us, is like literally like asking if we played it so they could play it. And then next thing I know, I went to this website called 1001tracklistings.com. I was like, who's playing my record? Because you can see who's played it on radio or whatever. And I'm looking and I'm like, Claptone played it 85 times. And then I'm like, whoa, Diplo has played it 95 times on the radio on Diplo's Revolution. I go, I think they play it more than I do. Like, it was crazy. Like, so it's cool though, because that helped me like actually connect with them. I sent Claptone a giant thank you and on Instagram, because on Instagram you can kind of connect with everybody, whether they read it or not. It's not 100%, but I sent it to him. And he hit me back. He was like, I would love to have you on a remix, which fast forward, that's how we did our remix for Claptone here, like in the beginning of the year that just came out in like March. We did a remix for him based on him playing our record. It was crazy.
That's awesome. And speaking of Diplo, you guys are ending your tour with North Coast, which has Diplo headlining. Are you excited about that?
Yeah, awesome. North Coast is like, I think it's a staple of Chicago. Like that festival. The guy who puts it together is one of my longtime friends also, which is awesome because I don't think he knew that I was Gettoblaster when he booked us. And then we started talking, and he figured out that, oh man, I know you from like your other aliases. And we got a chance to reconnect, which was amazing, because I left Chicago in like 2009 or 10. I lived in Denver for 7 years. And I kind of disconnected from the Chicago scene, minus coming back and playing here and there. So it was cool to reconnect with him. And he started this little baby called North Coast that wasn't really a little baby at first. And it's grown into this crazy thing. So it's like, just to be part of that, watching my friend grow and his festival grow along with Chicago scene growing. Because when I threw parties in the early 2000s, my last party that I threw, I think we did 19,000 people, and at that time that was the biggest party that happened in Chicago. Like, and it took many years for anyone to pass that number. So when they started doing these festivals, they smoked our numbers by double. I was like, this is so cool to see Chicago grow. Because when I moved to Denver, Denver was a bigger scene at the time. At the time, they were selling out Red Rocks 3 nights a week at 13,000 people, you know?
Have you ever planned a party on a yacht in Chicago?
I've played one yacht. The first time was last year. I've never done it before, and I always wanted to, just never really worked out. And I played the incorrect boat party for my friend Anthony Atala. It was really fun.
Yeah, did you get
that's a stressful situation.
That day was for sure because it was storming.
It's storming. You got to protect the CDJs. Like, everything's getting covered.
Like, thank God that was a double-decker indoor area as well, too. So there was the upstairs, which they just closed it off. But the lightning was incredible on the lake. I know it's scary to most people. I thought it was awesome. But yeah, have you guys been on the yacht parties? Yeah. No. Oh no! So you only know about it.
Yeah.
We are inexperienced in the yacht party DJ sets, but hopefully through life we'll get to learn about them. Hitting a spin back on a yacht, it's in my bucket list. So.
Oh goodness! I played a boat party. It wasn't a yacht, but it's a medium-sized tugboat in Clearwater, Florida. I'll never forget how crazy the waves were, and then all of a sudden, like, we're all me and all the friends are holding the decks so they don't slide off the table. It was pretty intense. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, because you guys use 4 CDJs to DJ between the two. That is crazy. That's really like collaborative.
Yeah, we try to do a lot of looping and layering beats and throwing different acapellas on. So you think it's one track and then this acapella, this other track comes in. We try to like kind of create a little mind bender there, I guess you could say.
For sure. Have you ever, I don't want you to out anybody, but have you ever seen a DJ or a collective play a set and you're thinking to yourself, you know those photos where it's like 12 CDJs spread out between one table and you got to ask yourself, like, what are they using this for?
They're using it for coasters. They put their drinks on them. If I could see anyone do more than 6 decks, I'd be impressed. So, but yeah, I have seen that, and I just laugh. I never even really thought about it until you said something. I'm like, I've definitely seen it, and I just know that they're not using it all. So I never really thought about it more than that. I'm like, wow, you're right. Actually, it's kind of clowning, I guess, right?
Well, there's one photo that always like surfaces around like Twitter, and it's straight up like a King Arthur looking like round table and just like 14 CDJs.
I've seen this.
One Allen and Heath like receiver, like.
And it's funny too because if you look closely, it's like, are they all plugged in?
Are they all plugged in? Is track 6 just like someone just lounging? Like,
seriously?
Yeah.
It's their own crowd cheer, because obviously they're doing 12 decks, they're train wrecking, so they got to have their own crowd cheer on the channel.
Yeah, for sure. One of my favorite questions to ask some of the artists that we have on is, right now I feel like we're at the point where we're in a small little renaissance in terms of like house, garage, and drum and bass music surfacing back up into more relevancy just with the general public through like TikTok, YouTube, the SoundCloud scene, of course. So I just want to get your take on why do you think that might be? Have you experienced like a bigger influx of younger crowd due to this? Yeah.
I have my own theory why house music is back in the mainstream. Because it never left. It was just not popular in America. It was big everywhere else the whole time. But I don't know. Like, I just know that the industry, especially the major labels, like, there are key people that make things go a certain way. Like right now, the biggest influencers of house music would be Drake and Beyonce, right? I mean, that's the big talk. Everyone's talking about, oh yeah, they're putting it on the mainstream. But the question is, when did it come back to the mainstream? And that would be the question. And to me, I've always thought of the people who have been the most iconic pushing of where the genre is going to go is Daft Punk. I know people don't think that, but I think that. They're heavily influenced by Chicago. If you listen to the Homework album, the song Teachers, 80% of the shout outs are like my friends K. Alexi from Chicago, Hyperactive from Chicago, DJ Dion, Paul Johnson, the late Paul Johnson, DJ Funk. It's like, it's a whole list of Chicago, Boo Williams, Glenn Underground. They shoot out literally the majority of that list is Chicago people. So their house influenced from Chicago, even though they're French, they're heavily Chicago influenced. And what I saw is when that happened, they did a lot of sampling of disco records. And all of a sudden at that moment, which is probably before your guys' time, but the late 90s, French disco house became this huge thing that everyone was sampling disco and putting it on a beat. They changed the game. Everyone wanted to sound like them. And then the next project came out and it was a little bit more electro clash. And then all of a sudden the electro clash scene began. And then after that you had Discovery, which was like straight electro, which then spawned all these electro artists. And if you look at the Get Lucky album, what happened shortly after that? Electro died and everyone went to house music. All I'm saying is these guys are probably the most iconic influencers of the electronic dance music scene in our era. And people just grow. They hear something new and they go from it. You know, a lot of kids never heard actual house music till Get Lucky was played at Coachella. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? People start really, wow, I like this. This is cool. This is different. This isn't so hard and in your face, you know? And like, there's all kind, and it spawns so many new things. I think personally, I always thought Daft Punk was like the leader of our industry, to be honest with you. That's why there's a strong, sure. That's why there's a strong French Chicago connection, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I can definitely see that.
I just know that with my own music, some of my peers that are like I'm good friends with Chavi and Shiva-san and Dombreski and Martin Solveig. These guys all play my music and they're all French. It's crazy. And I'm Chicago. Like it's cool. And I love their music. They love our music. I just see a connection there without having to like, it's like probably the first time I'm ever saying it publicly. Like I see a connection and there always has been, because I remember growing up buying French house records. And I saw documentaries of French DJs buying Chicago house records. So there's always been this unspoken connection.
I'm excited for North Coast, the big festival, and we'll see you there. Hopefully.
Who's your favorite artist you're trying to see? You don't have to say me. It's okay. but it would be cool if I was on that list.
Yeah, you know.
I'm honestly excited to meet you and Zach. What were you saying?
I was telling Molly, my main goal for North Coast is to bum rush Diplo and tell him how much I love him.
Oh yeah,
I'm just gonna go up to Diplo, giant T-shirt with his face on it, Wes, and then that's it.
That's another guy that's done an incredible job, like feeding the industry and moving it forward. Honestly, like Diplo, in my opinion, from the Louisiana bounce scene to like dubstep, trap, that whole world, like he's done a good job. Like, I don't know, how would you say orchestrating it? He's done a good job, like being the leader of that whole thing, that whole movement, Moombahton, like the whole nine. Like, you know, he didn't create all of that stuff, but like he did a good job putting it on the map for everybody.
Right. I believe Somi's going this year to North Coast. I really like Somi. I think she's really sweet.
Oh yeah. Amazing artist.
Yeah. I got the opportunity to interview her, and she just like, the way she like described, she comes from like a theatrical background. She like describes DJing as like, I don't know if you heard the term like storytelling, but it was just like very vivid, like the way she was like telling me how she does it. But yeah, I believe that was.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have not had a chance to catch a set yet, so I'm definitely interested in doing that.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like minimal techno, so it's really just like easy to listen to and just like really fun.
Yeah, we're trying to keep the whole weekend off. I don't know if it's going to be possible, but we're trying to keep that whole weekend off so we can actually enjoy the festival on the other days, because we play the first day.
Yeah.
So we want to kind of check out the rest of the festival and other artists too, because like, that's another thing that kind of feeds our inspiration, is like listening to what other people do too, like seeing where we fit in with it. You know, it's like our music is, you know, our influences, but we like to create new influences. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
definitely.
It does. Well, tell Zach we said hello from the tunnel. And thank you so much, Paul, for coming down into the tunnel with us. Good luck.
Okay, thank you so much.
That's awesome.
Thank you for coming down to the deep, dark tunnel. Good luck on the way out.
Now playing Way I Work by Gettoblaster.
You like the way I work. You like the way I work. You like the way I work. You like work. You like the way I 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 work.